Thank you so much, Danielle. And thank you, Ann Arbor District Library, which is, I think, the best library in the country. You do such wonderful programs, and I feel so fortunate to be in this community. Thank you. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
Come a long way.
I have.
Yes, we're glad you're here. And we've been talking, I don't know how many people got the preview conversation. We were talking about sports and real estate.
We saved all the interesting stuff for...
We tried, yeah. And actually, Ben, you and I spoke a few weeks ago on the Living Writers Show. So this is, let's hear it for Living Writers. T. Hetzel's in the audience. So this is actually the first time I've interviewed someone in a long form like that on the radio and then followed up in person. So I'm going to try not to bore you, Ben, with repeat questions.
I'm never bored talking about myself.
Oh, all right, great. Let's do it. This book, I adore this book. It's so special. It's getting so much wonderful attention. This book is shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It is, I just saw on my phone before I came here, part of Stephen Colbert's book club next month. Is that right? This month?
Tell us. Maybe this month.
It's happening.
I think it just got announced. Yeah.
It's such wonderful news, and it's such a beautiful book. To me, one of the words that comes to mind when I think about reading this book is intimate and private. It's quiet in a way, and we're going to talk more about the book in a minute. But I have to ask you now, for such an intimate story, an interior story, how does it feel to be out in the world in a country other than the one you live in? Stephen Colbert's talking about your book. Like, how is that? Can you talk about that part of things a little?
Yeah, I should start by saying my wife makes me say before every event that this is not a picture of our marriage. I'm not going to go into details yet. I mean, you did the same thing, right? You wrote a really intimate book, which you then had to talk about with people. I don't know. How did it strike you?
I just had fun. I mean, it was fine for me. Weirdly, it didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
But it did strike me reading your book, even though I know that it's not about your marriage. I know the difference, and this is fiction. But the narrator in the book is thinking and talking in his head to himself a lot. And that's why it feels private to me.
Yeah, I mean, I hope. I mean, when I set out to write a story, I want people to feel like they're getting the inside story. That seems to be one of the things that fiction is good at. And actually, the fiction can help a little bit with that because you've got the cover that is not necessarily true. But as much as possible when I write prose, I would like people to think that they're hearing stuff that they haven't heard before at a party in which, after hours of saying platitudes to people that they've met before, you finally get a conversation that feels like real speech. And aiming for real speech is one of the things I try to do when I sit down to write.
Amazing dialogue and thinking in this book too, but it really feels real. As a writer, I'm pivoting now, but as a writer, how long does it take to get to that? Do you just generate that real seeming dialogue and thought?
It's just totally effortless.
First go?
I don't know. No, I feel like I go through the text a lot to find out the things that strike me as a little bit phony. And there are a lot of ways of saying things that are a bit phony, including trying not to say anything phony. And part of what are the ways? Did this happen to you when you were working on your book? Were there tells that you thought, actually, I'm putting this on for show, it's not quite the real thing? Sometimes.
You had to reread it, the painful process of writing something and then rereading it and cringing and saying, oh, that's contrived, or that doesn't work. It sounded like it would work when I first wrote it.
Yes. I mean, yeah, and sometimes you try to make connections because that's what stories are supposed to do, and then the connections feel a little bit false. And sometimes you deliberately don't make connections between different events, and then that feels kind of random then and not quite right either. So it seems like a really live question when I'm writing, what would the real story feel like? And this is obviously not a real story, but as much as possible, let me put it this way. I try to make the false stuff sound like real things. I mean, all novels have real elements in them, but in some you try to make the real elements sound like fiction to join in with the rest, and I try to make the fictional stuff sound like the real thing.
You did a great job of that.
Thank you.
Yes. Maybe we should back up and have you tell us in your own words about the novel and just sort of introduce it for readers who haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this all week, and so one of the ways you can seem phony to yourself is that you repeat yourself. So I've kind of narrowed it down to two ways of describing it, and the simplest is just to say it's a book about what happens to a marriage after the kids leave home, which is what it is. The kind of larger premise is that it's about a guy whose wife had an affair when the kids were small, and to get through a bad time, he kind of tells himself that maybe when the youngest leaves home, he can reconsider the marriage. And the novel opens when he drops his daughter off at university.
And then he drives.
And then he keeps driving, yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't go back home.
Yeah, that's the surprise for
Well,
the
not
reader.
anymore.
Well, okay. Sorry.
I mean, I've said it so much. I mean, you can kind of
Yeah.
tell from the picture, right? Yeah.
It's
On the
pretty
cover.
clear from the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our narrator, Tom Layward, is his name, which I commented when we spoke before how much Layward sounds like wayward to me. Have you
Yes.
heard that a lot?
I mean, somebody said, people
Yeah.
have picked up on it.
Yeah. It's a perfect name, though, for him.
Well, it's tricky with names, isn't it? Because you want them to stand for character in some way, but it's one of the features of people's names that they don't. Or they say something about character, but it can't be too perfect. So I would never have called him Tom Wayward. But I did see, and I think I said to you on radio, in London where I live, one of the ways you can commemorate people that you loved is by giving them, putting their name on a park bench. And you go around the parks of London, street side benches, and you see these memorials. They might just say the name and the dates they lived. They might have a little message. In fact, this is an aside, but one of the ones I used to love on Hampstead Heath, which is a big park near where I live, had a name and a date, and then it said, "But please don't fret, he's not dead yet. He's only gone to Somerset." And then Somerset is a county in England. And then a few years later, it said, "Now alas deceased," underneath it. Anyway, so I came across
It was
it.
updated?
It was updated,
Aye.
yes. Obviously not by him. But I came across the name Layward on one of these benches, and it just struck me as a very suggestive but hard to pin down name, and that's why I picked it.
Just like the character.
Yeah.
So the character drives, and I think, this is you're in the great tradition of great American road trip novels. There are many that have come
Yeah.
before yours, but this book felt very different. And I would love to hear you talk about road trip novels and which ones you might have been thinking of, either emulating or avoiding emulating as you put this together. Because Tom, he starts on the East Coast and he goes west
Yeah.
all the way,
Yes.
pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much, but
I love the Rabbit series, not so much book 2, but 1, 3, and 4. And Rabbit Run, I suppose, was in my mind. Tom, apart from everything else, went to grad school and was writing about Updike. I love the Richard Ford books. I don't know if there are any fans in the room of the Bascom series. The truth is, I was thinking more of the road trips that I had done myself rather than other books. I went on 3 formative road trips that really left a deep impression on me, and those were in my mind as Tom set off. Are you a road tripper?
I love to drive.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, your 3 road trips, were they solo or were they with people?
No, I mean, in fact, the road trip, even though it's about a guy leaving his wife and family behind and setting off across America, the road trip is really based on is the one I did with my family, my wife and kids, and many of the incidents from that road trip made its way into the book. But no, I was not alone on it.
Well, I think one of the fascinating things about the book is that it's a true page turner. In that I was telling you at dinner, I read it in a day and a half because it just is propulsive. You just want to know what's happening. But really, what we have here is a man driving a car west.
Yeah.
That's the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you make it so fascinating? And how did you move the story forward? Because you obviously did that very successfully.
Yeah, that worried me too. I mean, the problem with the road trip novel, and actually a lot of novels that are supposed to be road trip novels turn out not to be. So Miranda July's All Fours is sort of a road trip novel, except she doesn't get anywhere. She stays still, right? And Rabbit Run as well starts out as a book that's going to be about a road trip, but he drives through the night and then comes back. And part of the reason is that the problem with the road trip novel is that you're often driving away from the source of the plot. This is really a book about a marriage, and he's running away from it. So how do you make it a kind of ongoing story? That was one of the challenges.
No one's done it before until.
No, that's it. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't claim that. But
Yeah.
so a few things. I mean, a few tricks. One of the things he does as he heads west is what I think you would do, which is he stops in on old friends. And so these visits are an excuse not just to relive elements of his past, but for him to consider the way his life has turned out and where he wants it to go in the future. The other thing I did, which was maybe a little bit odder, and is that while I was writing the book, I developed some odd physical symptoms that I couldn't quite understand. And I gave these symptoms to Tom as part of a more general picture about the way in middle age your life starts to fall apart and you can't quite understand why your body breaks down. And then so part of what holds the road trip together is that as he drives west, he's getting sicker and sicker.
Yes, I want to talk more about that sicker and sicker part if you'd
No,
like.
it's okay. Yeah,
Yeah, can
you get
we
used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about
Okay.
that. So first of all, I think it's one of the boldest moves a fiction writer can make is to put your own symptoms, your own undiagnosed, scary, maybe vulnerable symptoms in a book that's not done. You were writing the book and you were experiencing these things, right?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I think part of it is just that, writing does weird things to you as a career. I think all jobs, actually. I don't want to make writers seem special because they're obviously
everything.
not.
Yeah.
But every job affects you in some way. I think if you're a teacher, you can sometimes get used to your own voice. If you're a lawyer, you probably start to think of things in legal terms. And if you're a writer, one of the long-term effects is that all the things that happen to you start to sound interesting. And you want to make use of them. I should add, though, that even though it was my 12th book, whenever I sit down to write, it's not like it feels like a public event at all. I mean, I should have figured out by this point that at some stage they might be read by others. But it really just feels like I'm alone, it's Tuesday morning, it's raining, and I'm thinking about stuff I want to think about. And that privacy is probably important to what it means to write.
This is sort of what I was saying before about the intimacy and the privacy of the book. I mean, I really felt it. And it's amazing to have preserved that in the book, that intimacy into a book that is now published and out there.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this on the radio too. Maybe it was on the telephone call beforehand. There's a funny way that a book feels a little bit like an ex, that you used to be really close, and there's still a kind of weird charge around the meeting, but you're not quite close anymore. I don't know if you feel that about your book.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, not so much like an ex, but I miss it. I spent 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, I spent many more years than that thinking about it, but I spent about 2 years writing it. And when I finished, and I really did have that moment where I felt like I was finished, I thought, wow, that's a bummer. I can't go back to that beautiful time.
Did it set in
my
stone
book.
elements of your childhood that in memory were still a little bit more fluid so that you now refer back to the book rather than to the memory?
That's a great question. No, I mean, I was pretty solid on it. I learned a few things new in my research for my book. Mine's true. Yours isn't true. So that's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I lied.
Yeah, you did. I want to go back to talking about time a little bit. The time that elapses in the book is really, you'll have to correct me. It's 5 or 9 days or something,
It's something like that. I kept
like
losing track. I had to
Okay.
keep notes to myself. How many days have passed? Is it Tuesday? I don't know.
And yet,
He's on the road, right?
So it's a few. You have no idea how many
what
days.
is today,
or
actually?
What time it is
Is it Friday?
today? Actual today.
Only some of you are nodding. The rest of you have no clue. Right? Yeah.
It's Friday.
It's Friday.
But the book is a week, let's say. It's ish, something
yes.
like that, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the reader understands really the whole, this whole marriage, which is decades, and even before that a little bit. And so you have, I think you do amazing things with time in the novel. Well, maybe I'll stop talking. Maybe I'll let you talk about time before I...
Yeah, I mean, so the Richard Ford books are really strict about time for the most part. It's like 48 hours. It's maybe 72 hours.
I love those Richard Ford
they're-
books.
they're
Thank you for bringing him up twice.
It's so hard to do that, partly because you have to make ordinary days interesting. And let's face it, a lot of ordinary days are not that interesting. And that puts pressure on you to either jam-pack them with slightly implausible incidents or just to be interesting as hell yourself, which is what he does. And I didn't quite want to do that. So it's not like it's a blow-by-blow account of 10 days in his life. I did want it to feel like a period of time in which he was, to some extent, trapped. But I also wanted it to feel, and this seems true to me, that especially actually, I think I put this in the book somewhere. Solitude always struck me as a much intenser experience than people, and full of variation too, full of weather, right? If you're on your own, it's not only really intense, but it's full of variety. And part of the variety is the fact that all the different ages that you've lived through come bearing down upon you because you're thinking about them all. And that's the kind of feeling I wanted the book to have. I spent portions of my life, actually when I was playing basketball, that was the loneliest period of my life because apart from the 2 hours a day I was hooping, I was just on my own. And that's a really intense thing to go through, and I wanted that intensity to come across in the book.
Yeah, it did. And back to time, I guess I want to go back also to the illness aspect of the book.
Yeah.
Over the course of writing the book and writing about these symptoms that you were experiencing, you learned what the symptoms meant for you.
Yeah.
And you ascribed that meaning to the character too, right? Can you talk about
I
that
did.
part a little bit more?
So what started out as sudden tiredness when jogging, like middle-aged man gets tired is not really a medical emergency. It just turned out to be a signal of something. I would wake up with a bloated face in the morning, which happens to Tom. My eyes would be leaky. I'd get a lot of head rushes every time I stood up. Things like that were starting to happen, which were kind of consistent with middle age, but a little bit more extreme than they should have been. And so all of this is going on with Tom. And actually on my road trip, I passed out getting out of bed in the hotel room with my wife and kids around. That sort of happens to him too. All these things were happening to Tom. And by the time I was almost finished with the first draft, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. And so I finished that draft while I was going through chemo. And the process of my discovering what I had almost exactly mirrored Tom's discovering it. I should say just in Tom's defense a little bit, because he gets sometimes in reviews described as, the helpless male who can't even go to the doctor. It turns out that what I had is quite hard to diagnose. And I was kicking and screaming, and my wife was kicking and screaming, and nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. Tom was not kicking and screaming, but he did try. It's just hard. And then he found out.
And so one comment I have just on the bravery of this is that you didn't change the book. You left it. This was something real happening to you that I'm guessing was very intense and scary and personal. Some writers would have
What would they have
taken
done to it, though? I don't know. Do you think they would have fudged it in some way or taken it out?
If you were still writing it, if some writers would have said, this is my health and my potential mortality and my life, and it doesn't belong in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I do worry, I worry that there's some things should be sacred and you shouldn't touch on them. Mm-hmm. And my list of sacred things gets smaller and smaller.
Wait for book 13.
No, I mean, I hope I keep them
Yeah.
sacred. And I have a slightly superstitious sense that by tampering with some of these things, you are uncovering a kind of radioactivity that will come back to sting you. I should say that one of the things that happened to me as I got sicker and was diagnosed, I became less and less superstitious because it was just a medical thing. Like it wasn't some dark magic. It was just some stuff that was happening to me, and the doctors were treating it. So one of the kind of consolations of getting sick is that my superstition declined.
You felt better because you knew?
Oh, definitely better because I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I wanted to know something else.
Medical mysteries are terrible.
Yeah, I mean,
nobody likes that.
And the hardest part, and I'm assuming that people in the room have gone through similar things or have known people who have gone through similar things, there's this moment after the test and before the conversation with the doctor when they know what the next 6 months of your life is going to look like and you don't. And you're waiting for news about the most intimate part of yourself. And actually, that seems like a really profound moment to write about, because on some level, it's what he was going through more generally. He was waiting for news about what the rest of his life would look like, and the medical is just part of an aspect of that.
Yeah, it's a good sort of mirror to the marriage conversation.
Yeah.
I forgot to say earlier that we will take questions from the audience in a little bit. So I want to say it now so that you're all thinking of your questions for Ben. I have a bunch more questions, but you should think of yours.
And you're not allowed to leave until you ask a question.
Yeah,
so
that's the other thing.
Slow line going up.
That's the other thing. Yeah. So back to the marriage. Oh, our good friend Josie. I'm going to read something that Josie sent me that you said because I like it. Yes. Can I read this again?
You can read it. Yeah.
We have our friend in common, Josie, told me that in an interview, Ben said, writing a novel is a bit like a marriage. You hope as you go along, you become more interested in the story rather than less. So can you talk about that a little bit, and talk about the marriage in this book that readers are getting to know and understanding through Tom's road trip?
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed to me true that marriages get more interesting because your lives get deeper, and you hope that the relationship, which starts out, I mean, it's a really odd thing. I teach Goodbye Columbus, the Philip Roth novel, and I don't know if anyone knows it in the room, any Goodbye Columbus fans in the room. It's really odd that we make decisions, because being married is a form of collegial relationship, right? It's you're like coworkers. You get mortgages. You raise kids together. You do all kinds of joint enterprises together, and the basis on which we're hiring these partners is their sexual attractiveness. And that's a really odd form of hiring practice. Let's see, you're really cute, so you're probably good at money. Right? That's not. And in a way, with the novel, something similar happens, in that you have this shiny idea of the book that you want to write, and it turns out to be a little silly. But you hope that over the course of deepening the characters and the situations and the events that they're going through, it seems less silly because it seems more real. So that was what I meant by that quote. Just the specifics of the marriage. I mean, I've mentioned the affair, and the problem I wanted to write about was the fact, what seemed interesting to me was that it was the guy who had done nothing wrong. The wife had had the affair, and this puts them in a position where he's the one who hasn't done anything wrong, and she's the one in the wrong. And that's really an impossible situation if you want to have a happy relationship, right? You can't always be in the wrong. And he can't always be in the right. And part of what he has to deal with is his sense of innocence, that is part of the problem. That was sort of one of the things I wanted to explore in the novel.
Would you like to read a portion?
Sure. So I'm just going to start with the beginning because that's where it starts. This lasts, as the dentist says, this will take about 3 or 4 minutes. When our son was 12 years old, actually, I'm old enough now. I'm going to put on my glasses. I can kind of read
I just did, yeah.
without the glasses, but it's like in a swimming pool. So when our son was 12 years old, my wife had an affair with a guy called Zach Zersky, whom she knew from synagogue. He was a little younger, 3 or 4 years, had 3 boys, all younger than our 2 kids, but was in some sense in the same position as my wife. They both had partners who made good money, which meant they didn't have to do much, and got bored and restless and maybe even depressed. Zach's wife was head of oncology at Westchester County. I saw Zach touch Amy's hand under the fold-out table at the Purim Food Bank drive under the paper cloth. He was short, about 5'8", broad-shouldered and dark. He wore linen shirts open at the chest. His chest hair had started going gray. On Sundays, he played guitar for the kids at Temple Beth and taught them Jewish songs like Spin, Spin, C'est Vivant, very pro-Israel in a tree-planting, happy, clappy way. He was the kind of guy who danced with all the old ladies and little pigtailed girls at a bar mitzvah so he could also put his arm around the pretty mothers, and nobody would complain. Even before I saw them holding hands, I didn't like him. My parents are Catholic, but my dad thought religion was just a big fancy dress party, and he hated fancy dress. Maybe this is why I never got involved in the synagogue, which meant Amy had a whole social network where she had an identity and I didn't. She told me about Zach after I already knew and after it was already over. Amy had highly developed guilt feelings, which were so strong she couldn't help being mad at whoever she felt guilty toward, which was often me. She said she wanted to make me mad, too. She just wanted some kind of reaction. That's all she was looking for, but that's not really my style. If there's something you can do to fix something, I try to do it, but in this case, I wasn't sure what. She said, "You don't feel anything about anything." I said, "Everything I do for you and the kids. Nothing else matters to me." "So what do you want to do?" I asked her. "Do you want a divorce?" But she didn't want that, at least not until the kids had left home. The home and the kids were all she had to show for the last 12 years of her life. The thing with Zach didn't mean anything. It was more like a kind of self-harm. She knew that I knew that when she was a teenager, she used to cut herself on the thigh. A bid for attention, But Amy's a person who tells stories about her motives and actions, which are very persuasive to her as well. So it's sometimes hard to talk about or even work out what's really going on. You fall in love with somebody when you're 26, and you see them in all kinds of different lights and according to their potential. But after years and years of marriage and shared parenting and all the other shared decisions you have to make just to get through the days, you accumulate a lot of data about that person that after a while just seems more or less accurate. If you continue to have illusions, that's your fault. So if you stay married, it's because you've accepted that this is what they're like and what your life with them is like. And you stop expecting them to do or give you things you know perfectly well they're unlikely to do or give you. It's like being a Knicks fan. But I also made a deal with myself. When Miriam goes to college, you can leave too. Maybe this was just another one of those illusions, but it helped me get through the first few months after Amy told me about Zach. And for the sake of the kids, we had to pretend that everything was fine, when in fact what we obviously had, even when things smoothed over, was a C- marriage, which makes it pretty hard to score much higher than a B overall on the rest of your life.
So beautiful. Yes, we can applaud for that. Please do. So
You can see why my wife didn't want to be associated with it.
So the premise, this struck me again, hearing it, the premise that this betrayal has occurred and then this guy is going to sit with it quietly for, is it like 8 years? I can't remember in the book.
It is actually something like
Or
12 years. 12 years. He has a conversation with his brother at one point, and he says about the affair and that he waited 12 years, and the brother says, "You're just showing off now."
I mean, think of that. Think of holding on to anything that difficult for 12 years, and then you're going to act on it in, a decade plus.
Yeah, I guess maybe in my head it's not just the thing itself, but the cracks that opened up from it and that kept spreading and hadn't been dealt with. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he's still in a fit of sexual jealousy, obviously, about it. It's the sense, maybe the damage it did to his sense of her, and maybe even the damage it did to his sense of himself, right? One of the things he finds difficult is to deal with his son, because his son was old enough to know what was going on, and on some awful, cheesy, masculine level, he felt in raising this boy that a real man would have walked out then. And he knows that's the wrong feeling, but it shapes to some degree his relationship with his son ever after, even though his son is really the only one he can talk to about it, because he can't talk to his wife. And his daughter, part of what he loves about his daughter is that she didn't know.
And he drops his daughter off at college, and then he kind of, it feels so freeing and exciting and spontaneous. He just thinks, maybe I don't need to go home right now. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you asked about influences, and I have talked about this, but one of the things I think that Updike does incredibly well in Rabbit Run is that when he drives away from his wife, it's not like it's a planned thing. It's just this incredibly complicated set of mix-ups that suddenly makes breaking free seem like the natural and even logical thing to do. And so as much as possible, I tried to give a sense that it's a spur of the moment thing. Even though it's been building for a while, it seems like often the spur of the moment things we do have been building for a while, but there's still something that sets it off, and that's the.
It feels like this adventure.
Yeah.
I love that part of the book. I feel like middle age has so few adventures in general, and suddenly Tom, he's on a big one, and you have no idea what he's going to do next, other than drive west.
That's exactly, as well put. That's exactly what I wanted to try to get at in the book. This sense that in middle age, all the life changes seem bad. Like when you're a kid, it's part of what you're excited about in life is the life changes. You don't know who you're going to be, you don't know where you're going to live or who you'll fall in love with. And then increasingly the life changes seem divorce, illness, losing your job. All of these things happen in one degree or another to him. But I think people want some kind of life change to work toward that they can look forward to. And that's part of what drives him in the story.
Before we take audience questions, I want to talk about Amy, his wife, for a moment. So another thing that I'm so taken with in this novel is that when Tom is on this trip, he's had 12 years of maybe resentment to build up, but he lies down on his hotel bed and he starts talking to Amy. This is what it's like to have a spouse, is that you're thinking and sort of talking to that person all the time. no matter where you are, no matter if you're in Pittsburgh or wherever he is.
That's nice to hear. I feel like I carry on conversations in my head with the people I'm close to all the time, and they often go much better than they do in reality. Because those other people turn out to get in the way a little bit. And that's sort of what happens to him. He can speak much more freely and honestly with the Amy in his head. And at one point he even thinks, when he's feeling particularly loving towards her, I should call her. But he knows if he calls her, that there's no reason for her to have gone through, those intense revolutions that you go through in solitude. And so he'll be calling her cold, as it were. And he thinks, no, don't call her, because it's not going to go well.
Well, it's an incredible thing to do as a writer. We don't see Amy. We see her in the beginning of the book. But most of the book, he's driving and Amy's not there.
Yeah.
But the reader feels very connected and very aware of who Amy is and the kinds of decisions she'd make, because he really, he describes her and explains her.
Yeah,
It's
and
very
a lot of their backstory, how they got married and why. Like I don't want to give much away, but one of the awkward things about their relationship is that she was going out with a buddy of his. And he was the kind of high-flying guy who's never going to stay put for very long in the same place. But he's also going to go out with the most beautiful woman of his acquaintance wherever he is, and that was Amy. And then he moves on. He gets a fancy fellowship in Germany. And then Tom comes in, and he's just at the moment in Amy's life where she, for the first time, feels like, I want to drop out. Like, this isn't my game. I don't want to play this anymore. But it also shapes their relationship. And that kind of backstory is what he thinks about when he asks himself why this marriage has gone off the rails the way it has.
I wonder if anyone in the audience has a question for Ben. Davey, hello. Microphone coming to you.
I have 3 quick questions. You can answer none, 1, 2, or 3.
It's multiple choice.
Yeah, you can answer whichever ones appeal to you. I wonder if you can talk about the relationship between basketball and writing, as someone myself who's really passionate about both. I'd like to hear you talk about those connections. I believe you said you have children, and I wonder, you mentioned what your wife has thought of this book. I wonder if your kids have read any of your 12 books, and in particular this one, and what they made of it. And finally, I have a lot of my kids are young, but I have a lot of friends whose kids are like going off to college, and like they're Tom Layward types. Yeah. One friend of mine is like, he introduced me to Independence Day and Frank Bascom, and I think he is like 90% Frank Bascom DNA himself. And I want to like get him this book, but like I also can imagine it could be really quite challenging read for someone is going through all these things, and maybe therapeutic, but also. So I guess I'm curious, like, is this book suitable for someone for whom it might touch really close to the nerve?
Those are good questions. So the first one I think was about basketball, and the bit I read out where he says that you develop a lot of knowledge about your partner that after a while just seems more or less accurate. And then it says, like being a Knicks fan, that part of what I was thinking about was when I played minor league basketball in Germany, which is my first job after college. What's so cruel about sports, I don't know if this is your experience of it, maybe you're a lot better than I was, is that it's an incredibly sophisticated way of measuring how good you are in relation to other people. And that's what makes it so painful, too. Like, after one season of playing sports, I knew exactly who I was, and it wasn't that great. And marriage does the same thing, right? It's an incredibly sophisticated tool for allowing people's moral qualities to be measured. And so that was one of the connections I had in mind, just this form of terrible self-knowledge that you get from both the sports and the marriage. I'm trying to think, is sports more fun or is marriage more fun? The second question was about my kids, I think. Is that right? Yeah, so one of the best things, I've been doing a little book tour, and my 19-year-old daughter has come with me on a lot of it. And I thought, I've never put any pressure on my kids to read my books, because I said, I'm your father, not your writer. But I thought she would be meeting a lot of people who would ask her about it, and that in this case, maybe it was a good idea if she'd read it. And the truth is, mostly she was upset about the cancer stuff, because she knew the rest was like not a picture of our marriage, but the cancer was. And when I was 8, my dad had a brain aneurysm, and he woke up with a headache one day, and then he spent 3 months in hospital. And one of the very strange things about my recollections of that period is I have no memory of him in the hospital. I'd clearly blocked it out. And my daughter was older when this happened, but it's still amazing how easy it is or desirable it is for a kid they can't quite take the gravity of what their parents are going through, because who would want to? The last thing about whether he should read it, yes. I'll give a short answer. I mean, part of what appealed to me about the road trip is because, like, a story about a breakdown of a marriage, even if it's heading towards possible reconciliation, doesn't sound like that much fun to me. But road trip, everybody loves a road trip. So that was like, and he visits an ex-girlfriend. There's this wonderful and very cold Saul Bellow line in, I think, Seize the Day, where he says that everybody envies the guy who walks out on his wife. And I don't think that's really true, but there's still this thing like, wouldn't it be fun to go out and hang out with your old college buddies and see an ex-girlfriend? And so that's part of what I think keeps the book going.
Another question? Yes. Microphone coming to you. I think that might be important for the live stream. I'm not sure, but yes.
So road trip, in my mind, is an American thing. And it sounds like you spent a lot of time in Europe.
Yeah.
So is that hearkening back to a time? But your road trips, were they in the U.S. or in Europe? And does it make a difference for this novel? Maybe one. And then the broader question is that filling or addressing some longing in you as an expat? Do you consider yourself an expat?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do, yeah.
You know, for what you've left behind here, that you can take road trips in Europe, I know, but it's different in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, for distance as much as anything, but.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Yeah, yes is the answer to the second question. I mean, so I've been on 3 big American road trips, and those were the ones that I was drawing on. The most recent was the summer I was getting sick, so that was with older English kids and an English wife, but it was in America. But yes, I think part of the kind of pleasure of writing fiction for me even is that it lets me spend time in this country. You know, I threw my hat in the air at graduation, and the next day I flew to Germany to try to get a job playing basketball, and more or less I've been living in Europe ever since. It wasn't deliberate, it's just one of those things that happened. So yes, the road trip is a way of thinking about I mean, I think for everybody a road trip is, part of the pleasure of it is you stop in some small town, you think, let's start again, let's go here. But it's probably a little intenser for me, yeah.
Ben, you have a very casual way of just saying my first job was as a professional basketball player.
You like how often I slip that in?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little more? I mean, I would say it feels highly unusual and amazing.
I mean,
But it's not. But it was a lonely time in your life.
it
you
was
said.
horrible. It was the worst 6 months of my life. I was so miserable. But yeah, I was a senior in college, and I thought, I don't want to go to grad school. I don't want to go to law school. I don't want to get a job. Let's play basketball. And I didn't know if I could do it because I didn't play at college. I played in high school some, but I had a German passport from my mom, and there are quotas on the numbers of foreigners that you can have on a team in Europe, and so I would count as a native. And I knew I wanted to write, and I thought it would give me something to write about, which it obviously did. So the thing that was so painful about it, and I've touched on it a little bit, and this has been useful to my fiction, is that all the guys I played with were extraordinary. Not all of them, but like the top 6 people on the team. Like they were 6'6", 6'7", incredibly fast. They were smart. I mean, I think people underestimate the extent to which any kind of sport is a question of intelligence in real time, because you have to be able to think through complex situations incredibly fast. And they were dedicated, and they loved what they were doing. And what all this ability had gotten them was a mediocre job in a second division, poor European league outside Munich. That's where we were. And as a model for what happens in our lives, it seemed incredibly powerful. So the really strange thing about the league I played in, I don't know if I've said this already, is that I played against the young Dirk Nowitzki. Do people know who that is in the room? He became the greatest European basketball player, so when he was 18, I was guarding him and he was guarding me. And what was extraordinary about that is that there was nothing wrong with Dirk. Like, he was 7 feet tall, his form was pure, his first step was unbelievable, he had the quickest second jump of anybody on the court. There's nothing wrong with him. And if there's nothing wrong with you, it turns out you can have a really nice life. But for the rest of us, maybe the problem isn't that we are morally flawed. It's just that we're not quite good enough at all the things that we need to be good at in order to get our lives to be what we want them to be. So the basketball for me was a model of what happens to people. So an example, you're having a fight with your wife. You need to find the joke that's not going to belittle the situation, but that is going to lighten it. And to do that in real time is really hard. And if you can come up with that joke, you don't have the fight with your wife. There's a little moment in the book when, so I mentioned that Amy is, and I'll make this short, but I mentioned that Amy is, she went out with this high flyer. And he comes back into their life because he comes back to Boston and he wants to see Amy. And so they go out for a drink while Tom is sort of waiting in the apartment for them to come home. And Amy comes back almost in tears because she feels so guilty about having had a drink with him. And Tom says, "Why are you so upset?" And Amy says, "Well, he asked me to go away with him. He's got a conference in Vienna or something, and he wants me to come with him." And Tom says, "Well, did you want to go?" And she says, no, I didn't, but I wanted him to ask me." And Tom says, "Of course you did." And it's the right thing to say, because it both acknowledges that what she's going through is utterly normal, but it also somehow takes him out of harm's way, because by saying that it's obvious that she would want that, he somehow diminishes the jealousy that he feels. And because he says it in real time, they don't have a fight, and they stay together. But it's in the same way that in basketball, you see the past, but you often don't see it in time to make it, and this time he did. And so that seemed like a really useful metaphor for the things that go wrong in our interpersonal relationships. Sorry, it was a long answer, but but somebody asked it. I don't even know who asked it. Who asked that?
Yeah. Quick decision making. I like it. How about one more question? Someone's got to close out with a good question. No? Yes. Yes. You.
Thank you so much. And I will say I'm only halfway through the book, so I apologize if this plays out more in the second half.
You haven't gotten to the alien landing yet,
No,
right?
I'm looking forward to it. One thing that I kind of noticed sprinkled throughout is like maybe a slight commentary on political correctness. You know, there's an emphasis on maybe that Tom and his kids, there's this generational divide. And it plays out a few times, at least in the first half of the book. And I'm curious if that's like a broader commentary on middle age, or, you know, there's kind of a discussion about him being behind the times, or if there was an inspiration in including that in his kind of character development or personality.
Yeah, I mean, I just try to think through or feel my way through what would a middle-aged guy, white guy who'd just been suspended at work, if he gets together with his old buddies, what would they talk about? And it seemed to me quite likely that they'd talk about the way the culture has left them behind. And I didn't want to say they were right in feeling that. I didn't want to say, you know, they were stupid to feel it. And you'll see as the book goes on that it does, you know, they go a certain distance down that road, and then there's a kind of reckoning. But yeah, so it seemed to me that would be what would happen. I mean, it's a sort of joke in the book, which you will have already gotten to, that his daughter teases him by calling him angry white male. And the reason that's a joke is because he's the least angry person in all of their family disputes. So I wanted it to be not a simple, straightforward, you know, white guy can't catch a break kind of mood, but it seemed like it would be an element in those conversations.
That actually reminded me of another question I had for you. I don't want to get professory, but I do want to talk about gender for a second. This feels like a man's story. Like it has to be written that way. Did you ever think about writing it the other way? Or did you think about the characteristics of why this story in this way is so male, which is how it read to me?
Yeah, I mean, so I just wrote the first page out of the blue. It occurred to me, the first line occurred to me, and I sat down and wrote more or less the bit I just read to you. And what was interesting, one of the things that seemed interesting to me when I came back to it was the fact that the guy had not had the affair. Yeah. And so that was a man's story. I mean, I could have told the affair from the woman's point of view, but it seemed I wanted to write about the guy who feels like he's done nothing wrong, and that was the problem. I mean, my next book is a story of a marriage from a woman's point of view. So you know,
Did not know that.
That's where I'm headed. But yeah, so in this case, it seemed like the right point of view in which to tackle the things I wanted to talk about.
Last call. Any last questions? I feel like there were. Oh, Phil. Hi.
So I was just curious.
Oh, microphone coming.
Hello. Just kind of curious. There's kind of two different kinds of road trips you can take. There's road trips where you know the destination, and there's road trips where you don't know the destination. And I'm wondering what kind of writing journey this was for you. Was the writing of this book one in which you knew the destination and you were getting there, or did you? It sounds like you just wrote the first page, and you started traveling. Was that the experience?
Yeah, the honest truth is I don't really remember because by the time I finished writing it, I've gone through so many little moments of crisis and revolutions of thinking that I can't actually recall exactly how it came about. I think I had a pretty solid sense of where I wanted. So my initial idea when I came back to look at those opening pages is that I should take this guy who's done nothing wrong and make him do something wrong. And so that was where I wanted to go. As he got sicker, I changed. As I got sicker, I changed tack a little bit. But you can still see the seeds of my original intention in the book. So I would say it was both kinds of road trip. I had a pretty clear sense of where I wanted to go, but I also called a few audibles.
My last question for you. Do you have any book recommendations for all of us here at the library? What are you reading on the road? What are you liking these days?
Oh, so it's a sort of road trip. Somebody asked about English road trips. And I'm reading 3 Men in a Boat right now. Any fans of that book in this room?
I don't know it.
3 Men in a Boat by Jerome. So it's an Edwardian semi-memoir, semi-kind of comic novel about a guy who goes with a few of his buddies. They're not on a road trip, they're on a water trip. They take a boat up the Thames, and they camp out. It's incredibly funny. It's the book that actually saw my son through the pandemic. He listened to it on audio obsessively. And it's just wonderful. So my answer about European road trips or English road trips is that they exist, they're just not in cars. Tess of the D'Urbervilles is kind of a road trip. Like, she walks all over England. They're biking road trips, but this is a water road trip. And it's great. 3 Men in a Boat.
The cars are for the Americans.
Cars are for the Americans. Yeah. Well, you just get out. You land in the water after 3 hours. Like,
Yeah,
in
you have no
England.
choice.
It's an island.
Yeah,
Like, where are you going?
That's what it is. Ben Markovits, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you,
in Ann
thank you,
Arbor. This was
thank
so
you.
fun to have you. Book signing outside.